Welcome to True Crime Cases today. We are unveiling a shocking story of jealousy and violence in June 2011. The quiet town of Sedille, Indiana, was shaken by the sudden disappearance of Travis Clark, a beloved handyman known for his kindness and dedication to the community. By March 2012, the mystery deepened when Travis's body was discovered buried in the backyard of his own home. What began as a missing persons case turned into a killing story of betrayal and greed. The investigator uncovered the dark secrets of his wife As-salamu Clark and her lover Franklin, exposing the shocking lengths they went to for their forbidden love. On the morning of June 8, 2012, Cedarville, police officers were dispatched to a modest house on Willow Creek Drive. The air still carried a faint scent of freshly cut grass, a stark contrast to the grim discovery awaiting them. An anonymous tip received the previous night had led officers to the backyard of 127 Willow Creek Drive, where a life full of promise had been cruelly extinguished. The house belonged to As-salamu Clark and her new husband Franklin, a couple whose life seemed idyllic from the outside. As officers began digging beneath the carefully maintained lawn, the atmosphere grew tense. Neighbors peeked through parted curtains, their faces a mixture of disbelief and fear. By mid-morning, a crowd had gathered on the sidewalk, whispering theories about what might lie beneath the soil. The digging continued. Shovels sliced through damp root-entwined earth until just before noon, a distinct edge of a tarp came into view. Its dark material stretched around a human form. The officers exchanged solemn glances as the lifeless body was carefully unearthed. The remains were later identified as Travis Clark, a man cherished by the Sedille community for his kindness and skill as a handyman. Travis had been reported missing 8 months earlier. At the time, his wife As-salamu had explained his absence with vague references to marital tensions and erratic behavior. But now the community's worst fears were confirmed. Travis had never left Sedille. He had been silenced and hidden beneath the very ground he had so lovingly tended. By the following days, a frenzy of activity. On June 8, 2012, As-salamu Clark sat in an interview room at the Sedille police station. The sterile surroundings, lit by harsh fluorescent lights, cast relentless shadows despite the chaos around her. As-salamu appeared calm and composed, her fingers resting gently on the table in front of her. When questioned about Travis's disappearance, she described his behavior as distant and uncharacteristic. In the weeks leading up to his vanishing, she insinuated that he might have been struggling with internal demons, a convenient narrative that initially diverted suspicion from her Franklin, who had quietly entered As-salamu's life. In the months following Travis's disappearance was also interrogated. He supported As-salamu's version of events, insisting that his relationship with her had begun only after Travis had supposedly left. His tone was measured, his responses deliberate. However, despite their composed exteriors, investigators quickly noticed cracks in their stories. Forensic analysts meticulously examined the backyard and the modest home that As-salamu had shared with Travis. Soil samples taken from where the body was found contained microscopic fibers matching a tarp discovered in the garage. These fibers also match those found on As-salamu's gardening gloves, carelessly discarded in a corner of the basement. These subtle details began painting a damning picture. Financial records uncovered during the investigation revealed even more shocking evidence. In the weeks leading up to Travis's disappearance, As-salamu had drained his savings account. The transactions were substantial, including the purchase of luxury furniture and unexplained cash withdrawals. This newfound extravagance starkly contrasted with the financial prudence Travis was known for. Neighbors also began sharing observations that cast doubt on As-salamu's claims. Several recalled seeing Franklin's truck parked outside the Clark house late at night, well before Travis was reported missing. Others mentioned a sudden shift in As-salamu's behavior. After Travis's disappearance, a woman who had once been reserved and somewhat distant suddenly transformed into a vibrant, extroverted figure, frequently hosting gatherings at her home. Detectives pieced together a timeline suggesting a far darker narrative than As-salamu had offered. They discovered that Franklin was a regular visitor to the Clark home under the pretense of being a business acquaintance. What began as a professional relationship quickly developed into something deeper, with the two embarking on a passionate affair. Witnesses described seeing As-salamu and Franklin together at local events, their chemistry undeniable to anyone paying attention. By the end of that fateful week, investigators had gathered enough evidence to name As-salamu and Franklin as Crime suspects the body. Financial records fibers and rumors of an illicit relationship pointed to a chilling conclusion. What had started as a quiet investigation into a missing man had turned into a web of betrayal, greed, and cold-blooded murder. The carefully constructed facade of normalcy that Azalea and Franklin had built began to crumble under the weight of undeniable truths the Sedil community, which had once enjoyed. The peace of small-town life was left reeling as the story unfolded, exposing the darkness that can lurk behind even the most pristine appearances. Travis Clark embodied reliability in Sedil at 38 years old. He was the person neighbors called when their forays leaked or their fences wobbled. His warm smile and calm demeanor made him a comforting presence in the town for over a decade. He and Azalea had built a life together in their modest home. Though their marriage appeared solid to outsiders, cracks had begun to form long before that July night in 2011. Azalea, once captivated by Travis's stability, began to grow. Restless years of routine had dulled her ambitions. She craved more excitement, more luxury, and more attention. Her dissatisfaction did not go unnoticed by Travis, but he remained devoted, working long hours, believing that providing for her would be enough. It wasn't. Azalea began to emotionally distance herself, spending evenings at exclusive events she claimed were for networking. It was at one of those gatherings in late 2009 where she met Franklin, a man whose charisma and ambition embodied everything. Travis was not. Franklin, 42, carried his own baggage. A recent divorce had left him searching for distraction, and Azalea offered exactly that. Their connection was immediate and intoxicating. For months, they met in secret, their relationship fueled by shared dissatisfaction and dangerous fantasies of a different life. By the summer of 2010, their affair had intensified. Although Travis was not fully aware of Azalea's betrayal, he sensed a change in his wife. On July 14, 2010, his suspicions were confirmed. Returning home early from a job, he found Azalea and Franklin together. The confrontation was as explosive as it was inevitable. Neighbors recalled hearing muffled shouting from the house. But noon intervened. Inside tensions reached a breaking point. Franklin's temper, already heightened by fear of being discovered, boiled over. What began as an argument turned physical. When he struck Travis with a blunt object from the kitchen, the room fell silent. Travis's body lay lifeless on the floor, a brutal reminder of how far things had gone. Panic quickly took hold of them both. Franklin was visibly shaken, but it was Azalea who took control. Her reaction was chillingly pragmatic. Seeing an opportunity to rid herself of the man she had grown to despise, she convinced Franklin they had no choice but to cover up the crime together. They wrapped Travis's body in a tarp, their hands trembling as they worked. Every sound seemed amplified: the crunch of the tarp, the scrape of the shovel, the dull thud of dirt falling. For the next few hours, they buried Travis in the backyard. The chosen location was no accident. Azalea had previously mentioned wanting to install a patio there, a detail that now served as the perfect cover story. When the first rays of sunlight illuminated Cedarville, the once pristine lawn bore the marks of their macabre act. Exhausted but resolute, Azalea began crafting her alibi. By mid-morning, she had already called a few friends, casually mentioning that Travis had left after an argument. The previous night, her tone was calm, her delivery flawless. In the days that followed, Azalea set her plan into motion. She planted small details to support her narrative, telling acquaintances that Travis seemed increasingly dissatisfied with his life. She even left a handwritten note in the kitchen, suggesting he needed time to clear his head. Meanwhile, Franklin became a constant presence in the house. Although neighbors raised eyebrows at his frequent visits, Azalea dismissed their concerns, claiming he was helping with home renovations. By December 2010, the transformation was complete. Franklin had moved in, his belongings seamlessly integrated into the house he once visited in secret. To the outside world, it seemed Azalea had moved on from her husband's sudden departure. Few questioned her decision to remarry so quickly. Though rumors of impropriety began to circulate among Cedarville more observant residents, one cold February afternoon in 2011, Azalea and Franklin exchanged vows in a backyard ceremony. Friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate, their laughter filling the air directly above the spot SP where Travis's body lay. Buried, the choice of location was bold, almost defiant. The new patio adorned with lights and potted plants served as the centerpiece of their wedding photos from the day, which would later horrify investigators, captured the raw reality of the scene. Smiling faces and raised glasses above the site of the crime. For months, Azalea and Franklin lived as though nothing had happened, but secrets as dark as theirs have a way of coming to lighten. March 20th, 2011, their carefully constructed facade crumbled. Forensic evidence collected from the top and tools in the garage painted irrefutable picture fibers from the top matched those found on Azalea's gloves and under Franklin's fingernails. Soil samples from the shovel matched the disturbed earth in the backyard. Faced with this mountain of evidence, Franklin was the first to crack in a tearful confession. He detailed the events of that fateful night. His voice trembled as he implicated Azalea as the mastermind. He described her cold determination, her insistence that disposing of Travis was their only path to happiness. Franklin's confession led to Azalea's arrest, sending shockwaves through Cedarville. The woman who had once been a pillar of charity events and community gatherings was now at the center of a murder investigation. The trial began in January 2012 at the Jefferson County Courthouse. The courtroom buzzed with tension, filled with local and national reporters eager to cover what was being called one of the most shocking cases of betrayal and murder in recent history. Azalea Clark, proud yet visibly worn, sat beside her defense team, her expression a mix of defiance and unease. Across the room, Franklin, her former lover and co-defendant, avoided her gaze. His previous confidence had been replaced by a look of resignation. The prosecution, led by an unrelenting district attorney, presented their case with meticulous precision. They portrayed Azalea as the mastermind, a woman driven by ambition and greed manipulating Franklin into committing murder. They painted her as cold and calculating, motivated by a desire for freedom and wealth, far from a marriage she found stifling. Every piece of evidence deepened the public's incredulity. Receipts for luxury items purchased with Travis's savings, home renovations funded with his money, and photographs from the wedding held directly above his grave. Each detail added to the outrage. Franklin's role in the murder was undeniable, but his testimony became the cornerstone of the case against Azalea. In a measured, almost rehearsed account, he spoke of their affair and how Azalea had enthralled him with promises of a life together, free from the constraints of her marriage. He described the night of the murder in painful detail, admitting his involvement in the attack, but insisting that Azalea had orchestrated everything. According to his version, she had urged him to act, framing it as their only chance. A happiness throughout Franklin's testimony. Azalea remained impassive, her expression unchanging. However, her defense team worked tirelessly to discredit him. They argued that Franklin had acted alone, driven by jealousy and rage, and portrayed Hell as a victim of his manipulation. They pointed to Franklin's history of temperamental outbursts and impulsive behavior, suggesting it undermined his credibility, and painted him as the true culprit behind that night's events. The trial took a darker turn when the prosecution presented a series of love letters exchanged between Azalea and Franklin in the months leading up to Travis's death. The letters revealed a dangerous obsession. They spoke of forbidden love and a desperate desire to be together, even if it meant taking drastic measures. One letter in particular left the courtroom in stunned silence. In it, Azalea described how Travis's presence made her feel trapped and how she dreamed of a life where she and Franklin could start anew at any cost. Witnesses from both sides added complexity to the case. Neighbors described Azalea's erratic behavior in the months following Travis's disappearance, recalling how she shifted from withdrawn and somber to next expectedly jubilant. One neighbor recounted seeing her laughing and hosting a dinner party just weeks after Travis was last seen, a memory that sent chills through the courtroom. Conversely, former colleagues of Franklin testified to his volatile temper and history of conflicts, casting doubt on his claims of being manipulated by Azalea. As the trial progressed, the emotional toll on Travis's family became evident. His elderly mother, who attended every session, clutched a photo of her son and wiped away tears as the brutal details of his death were recounted. Travis's friends spoke of his kindness, unwavering dedication to his work, and dreams of building a better future with Azalea. Their testimonies reminded the jury and the public of the life that had been cut short and the void left behind. The trial concluded in March 2012. On March 6th, the jury delivered its verdict. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with anticipation. Azalea was found guilty of first-degree murder, a decision reflecting the jury's belief that she had planned the crime. She was sentenced to life in prison, without the possibility of parole. Franklin, for his cooperation with the prosecution, received a 25-year sentence for second-degree murder. Though he did not escape public condemnation as Azalea was escorted out of the courtroom by guards, she maintained the same impassive expression she had displayed throughout the trial. However, for those who had followed the case, the verdict marked the end of a dark chapter. Travis Clark's life and premature death left an indelible mark on Cedille, a small town that would never be the same after the trial. Cedille was left scarred by the tragedy. The case had not only shaken the community, but also altered how its residents perceived the people. They thought they knew the Clark house, once a symbol of hard work and family love, became a somber reminder of the betrayal and deceit that had taken place within its walls. By the end of 2012, Travis's family decided to sell the property. The pain of walking through a place filled with both happy memories and the shadow of tragedy was too much to bear. The new owners, fully aware of the dark history of the backyard, decided to demolish it. Immediately, the patio, which had been the epicenter of Azalea's lies, was replaced with a small garden. Over time, vibrant flowers began to bloom in the very spot that once concealed one of Ced DeVille's darkest secrets. Neighbors passing by couldn't help but notice the contrast. A space now brimming with life in a place of unimaginable sorrow. Still, the physical transformation didn't erase the memories. Travis's family channeled their grief into something meaningful. In early 2013, they established the Travis Clark Memorial Fund, a charitable organization aimed at supporting local businesses and struggling families. Travis had always been a man willing to help those around him, and his family wanted his legacy to reflect that spirit. The fund became a symbol of hope for Cedille, helping to heal the wounds of a community deeply affected by his loss. Meanwhile, Azalea Clark began to adjust to her life behind bars. By 2014, she had granted several interviews to true crime authors and documentary filmmakers. In these carefully orchestrated appearances, she continued to proclaim her innocence. She portrayed herself as a victim of circumstances manipulated by Franklin and misunderstood by the public. In her interviews, she projected an image of remorse and defiance, though she avoided speaking about Travis or even mentioning his name, choosing instead to focus on how Thetriel had ruined the life she had built. To many, her lack of genuine remorse was glaringly evident. In Cedarville, her words only reinforced the image of a woman consumed by ambition and greed. Franklin, on the other hand, faced his own form of penance. His reduced sentence was seen as a necessary evil to secure Azalea's conviction. But his role in the crime was never forgotten. After serving his time here, treated from public life, avoiding any meta attention, those who knew him described a man haunted by guilt, his once charismatic personality replaced by a quiet and withdrawn existence. Unlike Azalea, Franklin made no attempts to justify his actions, opting instead to live in obscurity for Cedille. Travis Clark's case became more than just a crime. It was a cautionary tale about the fragility of trust and the depths of human betrayal. His death became a story whispered at family gatherings, a moral lesson about how unchecked ambition could lead to ruin. By 2015, the scars began to fade, though they never disappeared completely. The garden that replaced the patio flourished, its vibrant colors serving as a bittersweet reminder of resilience and renewal. The Memorial Fund honoring Travis continued to grow, helping dozens of families rebuild their lives. Yet every time someone passed by the old Clark house, they were reminded of what had happened there. They remembered the man taken too soon, the woman who betrayed him, and the strength of a community that refused to succumb to darkness over the years. Travis's story continued to resonate in Cedille, a haunting reminder of the extremes of human nature. Although the town streets tried to reclaim their usual calm, a quiet tension lingered, reignited whenever someone mentioned the case. The house, now renovated and home to a new family, worked to shed its past, but the memories of the events that had occurred within its walls were hard to erase. Travis's family found solace in the positive impact of the Memorial Fund. Every story of a family helped every business saved. Served as a reminder that Travis had left an enduring mark on his community. The annual events, held in his name, brought CED DeVille's residents together, providing a space for reflection and a celebration of the life he had lived. Azalea's interviews from prison made her a polarizing figure. Some were intrigued by her portrayal of herself as misunderstood,